During the will reading, my sister sneered. She gets nothing. Dad despised her. My uncle joked. Even her own child knows she's useless. As the lawyer began, my 10-year-old son stood up and said, "What about the video Grandpa made?" The lawyer pressed play and everyone was stunned into silence. Claire clutched Tyler's hand as they walked into the mahogany-paneled office. The boy's sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, echoing in the oppressive silence. 28 years old, and she still felt like the family disappointment whenever she entered a room with the rest of them. Her sister Diane already sat in the leather chair closest to Mr. Harrison's desk, her manicured nails drumming impatiently against her Hermes bag. Uncle Robert leaned against the bookshelf, checking his Rolex for the third time in 2 minutes. Claire chose the chair farthest from everyone, pulling Tyler close. Her son's eyes were red-rimmed from crying at his grandfather's funeral 3 days ago. He had been the only person in William's life who showed Claire any genuine love after her mother's death 10 years back. Now even that connection was gone. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. His secretary set down a stack of documents that seemed far too thin for someone of William's wealth. Claire noticed Diane's expression shift from boredom to predatory interest as the lawyer began sorting papers. Robert straightened up, abandoning his casual pose against the bookshelf. The office smelled of old leather and fresh coffee. Claire watched Tyler swing his legs nervously, his heels tapping against the chair. He had inherited William's piercing blue eyes and stubborn chin. The same features that had made her father intimidating now looked vulnerable and young on her son's face. Outside the window, Pittsburgh's skyline stretched gray and imposing under autumn clouds. Claire remembered how William used to point out his various properties from his penthouse windows, naming each building like a father might name his children. "Before we begin," Mr. Harrison said, "William specifically requested that his entire family be present for this reading." His gaze moved pointedly to Claire. He was quite insistent about that detail. Diane snorted softly. "I'm sure he wanted to explain why she's getting nothing in person. Dad always did love his little speeches about responsibility and disappointment." Claire's jaw tightened. 28 years of being the black sheep, and her sister still couldn't resist twisting the knife. Tyler shifted uncomfortably beside her, his small hand finding hers under the table. The boy had learned early to read the tension in rooms, to navigate around the adult's hostility toward his mother. Robert chuckled from his position by the window. "At least now the kid will finally see who his mother really is. Even a 10-year-old can understand when someone's worthless." Tyler's grip on Claire's hand tightened so hard his knuckles went white. She felt him stiffen beside her, that particular stillness that meant he was fighting back tears. These people had no idea what they were doing to him. They saw him as an extension of his mother's supposed failures, not as William's only grandchild, who had lost the one person who truly adored him. Mr. Harrison opened the leather portfolio with deliberate care. William left very specific instructions about how this reading should proceed. He was quite detailed about the order of revelations. Claire noticed the odd phrasing. Revelations. Not just bequests or inheritances. Something cold settled in her stomach. William had always been a chess player, thinking 5 moves ahead even in casual conversation, especially when he felt wronged. The lawyer's hands trembled slightly as he arranged the documents, either age or nerves. "To my nephew Robert," Mr. Harrison began, "who has managed my portfolio so expertly for the past 15 years, I leave my collection of vintage watches and my Mercedes." Robert's face lit up with satisfaction. He pushed off from the bookshelf, moving closer to the desk. "Well, at least someone in this family appreciates loyalty. To my daughter Diane, who has upheld the family name with such distinction, I leave the house in the Hamptons and my art collection." Diane's smile could have cut glass. She leaned back in her chair with the satisfied posture of someone whose world view had just been confirmed. Her eyes flicked to Claire with undisguised triumph. Claire felt Tyler's breathing quicken beside her. She squeezed his hand, trying to transmit some kind of strength to him even as her own chest tightened with familiar shame and anger. Mr. Harrison paused, his finger tracing down the document. The silence stretched so long that Claire could hear the antique clock ticking on the mantelpiece. Tick, 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 each second hammering home what she already knew was coming. To my daughter Claire, the lawyer continued, his voice growing strangely formal, who has chosen her own path despite my guidance. Here it comes, Claire thought. The final public humiliation. The last word from a man who had spent decades making sure she knew she would never measure up. Tyler's small body was practically vibrating with tension. She wanted to cover his ears, to protect him from whatever cutting words William had prepared. But she couldn't move. Diane actually giggled, a sound like breaking crystal. This should be good. Tyler suddenly straightened in his chair. His voice cut through the tension like a knife through silk. What about the video Grandpa made? Mr. Harrison stopped reading mid-sentence. His eyebrows shot up over his glasses. Video? He made a video for Mommy last week. He said it was really important and that she should make sure everyone saw it when Tyler's voice caught, when he wasn't here anymore. The room went dead silent. Diane's smile faltered. Robert stepped closer to the desk, his face clouding with confusion. Claire stared at her son, her heart hammering. She had no idea what Tyler was talking about. William had barely spoken to her in the months before his death, certainly hadn't mentioned any video. Mr. Harrison fumbled through his papers, clearly searching for something. There was a sealed envelope. William instructed me to hold on to it until after the will reading, but the lawyer's hands shook as he reached into his bottom desk drawer. He pulled out a plain manila envelope marked with William's sharp handwriting. For the reading, after the initial bequests. His face had gone pale. I assumed it was just a letter, Mr. Harrison muttered, breaking the seal. Inside was a USB drive and a single note in William's handwriting. The lawyer read it silently, and his expression shifted from confusion to something approaching fear. Robert moved around the desk, trying to read over the lawyer's shoulder. What does it say? Claire watched Mr. Harrison's Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. The man had probably read thousands of wills in his career, but this one was clearly different. He looked up at Claire, then at Tyler, then back at the USB drive as if it might explode. He wants this played now, before the reading continues. Mr. Harrison moved to the flat-screen television mounted on the wall behind his desk. His movements were slow, reluctant, like a man walking toward his own execution. The USB drive clicked softly as he inserted it into the port. The screen flickered to life, showing William's study. Claire recognized the familiar burgundy leather chair, the wall of legal books behind it. William appeared on screen, looking thinner than she remembered but unmistakably alive. He was wearing his Navy suit, the one he saved for board meetings and family functions. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his blue eyes sharp and focused directly into the camera. He looked like a man with something important to say. Tyler leaned forward in his chair, his small face lighting up at seeing his grandfather again. Hi, Grandpa, he whispered to the screen. William's voice filled the room, commanding attention even from beyond the grave. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and my will has been read to its most disappointing conclusion. He paused, his eyes seeming to look directly at each person in the room. But the will you just heard is not my final testament. It's what I call my decoy will. Diane gasped audibly. Robert stepped backward as if the screen might reach out and grab him. Mr. Harrison sank heavily into his chair, the USB drive's case still clutched in his trembling hand. Claire felt the world tilt slightly. Decoy will. The words didn't make sense together. Wills were legal documents, binding contracts, not magic tricks or elaborate pranks. But William's expression on screen was deadly serious, the look he wore when closing major business deals. By now you've all shown your true colors one final time, William continued. Robert, Diane, thank you for reminding me why I changed my mind. William shifted in his chair, his hands folded calmly on his desk. Behind him, Claire could see the silver-framed photo of Tyler that he kept on his bookshelf. The one from last Christmas, where the boy was wearing the ridiculous reindeer sweater William had bought him. You see, 6 months ago, I discovered something interesting about my medical care. William's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Someone had been adjusting my medication dosage, increasing my blood pressure pills to dangerous levels. It would have looked like natural causes. A gradual decline, very believable. Claire's blood went cold. Robert's face had drained of all color. He was backing toward the door now, his expensive watch catching the light as his hand shook. My private investigator tracked the prescription changes back to someone with access to my medicine cabinet, someone who stood to inherit a significant portion of my estate. The video continued, without mercy. Robert, my dear nephew, did you really think I wouldn't notice? 20 years of managing my affairs, and you got sloppy in the last 6 months. The same period you've been pressing me about updating my will. Robert's back hit the office door. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. Diane stared at him, her perfectly composed facade cracking like cheap paint. Robert, what is he talking about? You think I got where I am by trusting people blindly? William's image leaned forward. I've been switching my pills with placebos for 3 months, but you kept increasing the dosage, didn't you? So certain that you were killing me slowly. Tyler's small voice cut through the tension. Uncle Robert was hurting Grandpa? Claire pulled her son closer, her mind reeling. All those family dinners where Robert had played the concerned nephew, asking about William's health, offering to help with his medications. William continued his posthumous revelation with cold precision. I recorded our last conversation, Robert. You really shouldn't have threatened to find other ways if I didn't change my will. Audio surveillance is wonderful these days. The room was thick with tension, so heavy it felt like breathing underwater. Robert's hand was on the doorknob now, but he seemed frozen, unable to turn it. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool October air conditioning. And Diane, William's voice turned to his other daughter, my golden child, who never visited until she heard about my health issues, who suddenly became so interested in family affairs when the doctors mentioned my heart problems. Diane's Hermes bag slipped from her numb fingers, hit the floor with a dull thud. Her perfectly applied lipstick stood out starkly against her now pale face. Dad, I never. You've been feeding Robert information about my routine, my medications, my doctor appointments, my own daughter. Claire felt like she was watching a carefully orchestrated demolition. William had always been methodical, but this level of planning was extraordinary even for him. He had died knowing exactly what his family had done, and he had prepared this moment with surgical precision. So the will you heard today stands legally, William said from the screen. But there's more to my estate than what Mr. Harrison just read. Much more. Tyler tugged on Claire's sleeve. Mommy, what's happening? She looked down at her son's frightened face and realized that somehow, impossibly, her 10-year-old had known about this video. Had known that William had something important to say that would change everything. The grandfather who had always treated Tyler like the most precious thing in the world had trusted a child with this secret. The bulk of my estate, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolio, the trust funds, was transferred into separate accounts 3 months ago. Mr. Harrison reached into his desk drawer again, this time pulling out a much thicker folder sealed with red wax. His hands trembled as he set it on the desk. I was instructed to open this only after the video played. William's voice continued from the speakers, relentless as a tide. Claire, my daughter who I failed for so many years, who chose love over my approval when she had Tyler, who never asked me for money, never schemed for her inheritance, never pretended to care about my health for financial gain. Claire's throat closed up. Tears she had been holding back for years started to fall. Tyler wrapped his small arms around her waist, somehow understanding that his mother needed comfort even if he didn't fully grasp the situation. You gave me my only grandson. You worked 3 jobs to support him rather than come begging to me. You have integrity. The folder Mr. Harrison opened contained documents that made him gasp out loud. His professional composure finally cracked completely as he stared at the pages. His face went from pale to white to almost green. Everything, William said simply. The Portland building, the Chicago investments, the manufacturing company, the trust accounts, it's all hers. $473 million, to be exact, along with one condition. Diane made a sound like a wounded animal. Robert fumbled for the door handle. actually turning it this time. I have to go. I have to. You have to stay, Tyler said firmly, his child's voice carrying an authority that shocked everyone in the room. Grandpa said so. On screen, William smiled for the first time. My grandson understands the importance of seeing things through to the end. The condition is simple, William continued. Claire must use $10 million to ensure that both Robert and Diane receive proper legal representation. Because the evidence I've compiled about the attempted murder and conspiracy will be turned over to the Pittsburgh Police Department in exactly, he checked his watch, 48 hours from the reading of this will. Robert's hand slipped off the door handle. He collapsed into the empty chair beside the door, his face buried in his hands. Diane stared at the screen as if willing it to suddenly announce this was all a joke. Tyler looked up at his mother with those piercing blue eyes he had inherited from his grandfather. He said you were the best mommy ever and that you deserved everything. Claire could barely breathe. $473 million. But more than that, vindication. Proof that she had been right to trust her instincts about her family, right to keep her distance from their toxic games. William's final message was delivered with the tender tone he used only for Tyler. My grandson, you are 10 years old, but you already understand what honor means. You knew this day would be important for your mother, and you made sure she would see this message. I am proud of you. Tyler beamed through his tears. I kept the secret, Grandpa, just like you asked. Claire realized then that Tyler's presence today wasn't accidental. William had planned for his grandson to be here, to speak up about the video at exactly the right moment. He had trusted a 10-year-old with the timing of this entire revelation because he knew Tyler would protect his mother. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, his professional training finally kicking back in. I have the legal documents transferring all assets to Claire, witnessed and notarized last month. Everything is in order. The video screen went black, leaving the room in stunned silence. Robert stood up slowly, like an old man despite being only 45. He looked directly at Claire for the first time that day. I never meant for it to go this far. I needed the money. The European investments went bad, and I thought I could borrow against my inheritance and pay it back before he died. But you tried to kill him, Tyler said matter-of-factly, the way children state uncomfortable truths without understanding their full weight. I know. Robert's voice broke. I know what I am. Diane remained seated, staring at her manicured hands. He offered me 20% if I helped. I thought he was old and sick anyway. I didn't think about what it really meant. Claire found herself looking at these people who shared her blood, who had tormented her for decades, who had tried to murder her father. She felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only a deep, bone-tired sadness. Mr. Harrison began organizing the paperwork with nervous efficiency. The bank transfers will take 48 hours to complete. I'll need you to come in tomorrow to sign additional documents, Ms. Idjo. Claire, and I'm obligated to inform you that I've already contacted the authorities as per your father's instructions. Tyler tugged on his mother's hand. Can we go home now? I want to tell Grandpa's picture about today. Claire looked down at her son, this remarkable little boy, who had carried the weight of a secret for months, who had stood up in a room full of adults and changed everything with 8 simple words. William had chosen his ally well. She stood up, her legs surprisingly steady despite everything that had happened. Yes, sweetheart, we can go home. The walk to the door felt longer than it should have. Behind them, Diane was crying quietly, and Robert was mumbling something about lawyers. As they reached the office door, Claire turned back one last time. Mr. Harrison was already on the phone, probably with the bank. The USB drive still sat beside his computer, such a small thing to contain such devastating revelations. Mommy, Tyler said as they walked down the hallway. Are we rich now? We're secure, Claire corrected gently. There's a difference. Grandpa said you'd know what to do with the money. He said you'd use it to help people, not just to buy things. Of course, William had discussed the inheritance with Tyler. The old man had probably spent hours talking to his grandson about responsibility, about using power wisely, teaching him lessons that Claire's sister and Robert had never learned. They stepped into the elevator, and Claire pressed the button for the parking garage. The descent felt like moving between worlds. In the car, Tyler buckled his seatbelt and looked out the window at the Pittsburgh skyline. "Grandpa showed me which buildings are ours now. He said someday I might help you take care of them." Claire started the engine, her hands still shaking slightly. The magnitude of what had just happened was beginning to sink in. She was now responsible for hundreds of millions in assets, for businesses that employed thousands of people. But more than that, she was responsible for carrying forward William's legacy in a way that honored what he had truly valued. "He also said to tell you that he was sorry," Tyler continued quietly, "for all the years he was mean to you. He said he was angry at the wrong person." The tears came again, but different this time. Not tears of shame or disappointment, but of grief and relief and overwhelming responsibility all mixed together. As they drove through downtown Pittsburgh, Claire thought about the conversation she'd had with William just 2 weeks before his death. He had called her unexpectedly, asking to see Tyler. She had been suspicious, as always, but had brought her son for what turned out to be their last visit together. She remembered how William had seemed different that day. Quieter, more thoughtful. He had spent 3 hours building a Lego castle with Tyler, something he had never done with her when she was young. At the time, she had assumed he was starting to feel his age. Now she realized he had been saying goodbye, making sure Tyler understood how much he loved them both, creating one last positive memory before the truth came out about what the rest of the family had done. "Can we visit Grandpa's grave tomorrow?" Tyler asked. "I want to tell him how everything went." "Of course, sweetheart." That evening, as Tyler slept in his own bed in their modest apartment, Claire sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and tried to process the day. Tomorrow, Mr. Harrison would call with wire transfer confirmations. Tomorrow, she would start figuring out how to manage an empire built on her father's life work and fueled by her family's betrayal. But tonight, she looked around their small home and thought about William's final gift. Not just the money, though that would change everything, but the vindication. The proof that she had been right to trust her instincts, right to keep her son away from the toxicity that had consumed the rest of her family. Tyler had insisted on leaving William's photo on the kitchen counter where he could see it. In the picture, the old man was smiling, holding his grandson on his shoulders during one of their secret outings to the zoo. "Thank you," Claire whispered to the photo, "for seeing what I couldn't see in myself." Outside, Pittsburgh glittered in the darkness, full of possibilities.